Okay, let's go back to that breaking news from the White House. Donald Trump has sent a letter to Canada threatening a new tariff rate of 35% starting August 1st. Ian Lee is an associate professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, and he joins me now to break down this letter. Thank you so much for joining us, Ian, on such short notice.
My pleasure, Chris.
Ian, let's start with your reaction to this letter. I mean, I think when you're dealing with this Trump administration, it goes without saying that you don't know what's coming. This 35% amount coming in the form of a letter, is that surprising to you?
It is. I mean, we know we've learned to expect the unexpected with him, but he has been, up until now, there's been some semblance of, I would say, some logic, because he's trying to get us, he's trying to leverage us and use to intimidate us, using the threat of tariffs to achieve some end. But he's usually expressed that end. He said, I want that digital service tax canceled or else. In this instance, now we haven't seen it. This is breaking news, as you said. So we don't know whether he has additionally tied this to some express demand, such as, for example, get rid of supply management or else I'm doing 35%. But the larger issue, we don't yet know. He hasn't made that clear, but I'm sure we'll know probably by tomorrow morning or sometime tomorrow. I think the 35% will be devastating. I mean, we have about $1 trillion going across to the U.S. and American buyers, because they're buying our stuff, all of our stuff, and they will quickly pivot to look to any company coming from any other country that isn't subject to a 35% tariff. And most goods are, other than say something like copper, where there's no substitute for copper. So that's a unique situation. Most goods are substitutable. You can substitute something for something else. And so it's much easier when you're talking consumer goods and automobiles and that sort of thing to substitute. So the point that I'm making is this is devastating for Canada.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that a little bit more, because as you mentioned, and we're going to have to wait for details on exactly how that 35% will apply, whether it's separate from the auto tariffs, the steel tariffs, the aluminum tariffs, the copper tariffs, what's exempted under CUSMA, which is the free trade agreement between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. But I want to break down this letter, which we've printed out here, which has a list of grievances that we've heard from the past, including the fentanyl seizures coming from Canada, which, according to the Canadian government, represents a minuscule amount of seizures at the U.S. border. And yet it is highlighted in this letter. Ian, I wonder what you make of the tone of this letter.
There's anger in that letter. Let's be very clear. His knickers are in a knot, to use a phrase of my late mother. He's very upset about something. That's why I think he's got an ulterior motive. I know there's great debate on this in Canada and around the world. Some people say, no, he's just completely irrational and there's no rhyme or reason. I don't believe that. I believe he does. I don't agree with him at all. I want to make that very clear. I don't think anyone does. But I do think he's up to something. He's got an agenda. Yeah. He has an agenda, and it comes back to his sense, his perception that America is treated unfairly by allies and for that matter enemies, and they do consider China an enemy, but they consider Canada an ally, and so he's using this as a stick, as a cudgel, as a weapon to intimidate us into changing something that they don't like. I think that list starts with the USTR, United States Trade Rep, annual report to the Congress that lists the trade irritants. I'm not saying that there aren't additional trade irritants, but that list has been tabled in Congress literally going back to the Clinton years, which is a third of a century ago. Supply management, the Telecom Act that prohibits American telecom from coming in, and more recently, the digital service tax. So this suggests to me, Chris, we've got to look for a grand bargain and say, look, what is it you want? What is your end game? Instead of this, Mickey Mousing, a tariff here and a tariff there, and it just is serial tariffs. We've got to, say, look, we're willing to put all our cards on the table. Didn't say we're going to give everything away, but we're willing to put everything on the table. But we've got to know what your end game is, Mr. Trump. And I assume he has an end game. I don't believe that this is irrational and he has no end game. He's just doing this for fun. I don't think presidents act.
I mean, speaking to that, Ian, we've heard President Trump describe himself as a deal maker, plain and simple, that nothing is personal. He's trying to make a great deal for the United States. Quite notable in this letter, what's not mentioned is anything about the 51st state. However, I want to read you verbatim what he says in this letter of how Canada can avoid tariffs altogether. He writes that there will be no tariff in Canada or companies within your country if you decide to build or manufacture product within the United States. And in fact, we will do everything possible to get approvals quickly, professionally, and routinely. In other words, in a matter of weeks. Hard to tell exactly what he means by that, whether he wants Canadian industry to all of a sudden be moved to the United States. How do you interpret that line?
I do interpret it, and I've said this in somewhat slightly different form before in speaking to you and your colleagues at CBC. And I made a sharp distinction. I've always made a sharp distinction in my classes and in media interviews and so forth between manufacturing and natural resources. You can't move a mountain that's got copper or gold or oil or something in the mountain or a series of mountains. You can't move it to the United States or to another country. It is fixed in sight. Manufacturing, I'm not suggesting it's mobile. You can just pick up a factory and move it across the border. But it's more mobile in the following sense. Factories do close from time to time. Factories get closed all the time. And capitalism is mobile in the sense that capital can move across borders and say, well, we're not going to open up a new plant in Canada. We're going to open up.
I'm going to wrap you up because we've got about 5 seconds left. Thank you so much for your insight. I know we got you on late notice, and I know that this is going to be one of many conversations that you'll be having about this. Ian Lee, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.